moving on to the Tucker files.
The Tucker leaks.
The Tucker leaks. Let's go with the Tucker leaks.
The leak attack.
The New York Times published a text from Tucker Carlson last night in an article that, to me, had multiple different elements. We could put up this first one here, and why don't we do we have it? Why don't we read it?
So I have something from the New York Times right here. They say, this is from Mediaite. In the days after Carlson was fired from Fox, multiple reports claimed his ouster was in part fueled by network leadership learning, as the New York Times put it, of, quote, highly offensive and crude remarks Carlson made. The Times reported that they reviewed some off-air footage of Carlson talking about whether his, quote, postmenopausal fans will approve of his looks, as well as another video where he commented that someone else's girlfriend was, quote, yummy. Now, Media Matters got those videos and published them yesterday on the heels of Media Matters publishing that video, which I swear, it looked to me like such a deep fake, but apparently is not, of Tucker Carlson laying into Fox Nation and saying that they need to improve the product, et cetera, et cetera. So why don't we just take a look at the SOT E2 here so you can see the video yourself.
You know what? I'm not qualified on that score, I will say. I thought his girlfriend was kind of yummy. Just kidding, in case this is being pulled off the bird. Yeah, the bird. Hey, Media Matters for America. Go fuck yourself. That's the first thing I want to say tonight. Second thing is, totally kidding, I don't even know what his girlfriend looks like. And if I did, I would not find her yummy.
Okay, so that's definitely why the video got leaked to Media Matters, specifically because he literally flips the middle finger to Media Matters. You're left with no choice at that point. And that's another element of this entire story, is that it looks like Fox is leaking video. And it could actually be what gets Tucker out of his contract with Fox. He still has 2 years left on his contract. If they're leaking and that can be proved, it's sort of probably you're able to talk about that as a breach of contract. What did you make of the videos?
I thought that the text was more interesting, and I wanted to get your take on that as well. If we could put up E3, and we'll just read it so we have the full context. I actually didn't like the way that the New York Times kind of broke the text into two separate sections.
And this came last night. This was a huge story as we were prepping the show last night. This released text from Tucker.
Right, exactly. And so I'll just read it. So Tucker writes, a couple of weeks ago, I was watching video of people fighting on the street in Washington. So this is January 7th, 2021. So he's referring to videos that were going around in December, which people might remember, it was like Proud Boys and their affiliates fighting with Antifa on the streets. He writes, a group of Trump guys surrounded an Antifa kid and started pounding the living crap out of him. It was 3 against 1 at least. Jumping a guy like that is dishonorable, obviously. It's not how white men fight. And I want to come back to that line. Yet suddenly I found myself rooting for the mob against the man, hoping they'd hit him harder, kill him. I really wanted them to hurt the kid. I could taste it. Then somewhere in my brain, an alarm went off. This isn't good for me. I'm becoming something I don't want to be. The Antifa creep is a human being. Much as I despise what he says and does, much as I'm sure I'd hate him personally if I knew him, I shouldn't gloat over his suffering. I should be bothered by it. I should remember that somewhere somebody probably loves this kid and would be crushed if he was killed. If I don't care about those things, if I reduce people to their politics, how am I better than he is? So I've seen a lot of people hitting him for kind of his glorification and celebration of the violence at the top of that. But to me, there's some interesting parallels here with the Shirley Sherrod case, if you remember this.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
This was Breitbart's kind of faceplant back in 2011 or so, where he got video of Shirley Sherrod, who was a Department of Agriculture employee, who gave this speech about how very early in her career in Georgia, a white farmer came to her with some type of a need, and she did not give him the kind of service that he deserved due to racial bias against him.
Right.
And she said that she sat with that, she thought about it, she realized how wrong it was, and it kind of changed her entire outlook. And she decided, and she realized that we're all people. Everybody needs as much. Everybody needs help. That we all struggle. She talks about how she and him became good friends over time, and how this story led to her finding a more graceful relationship with race than she had very early on. And I think that it's a good thing for people to be honest about their feelings and their struggle. And I think that liberals who are jumping on this part of it now, the white people thing, I think is a completely separate thing that we should talk about. But liberals who are jumping on this should remember that they too have thought of their political opponents in deeply callous terms. Like if you think about during the pandemic, all of the joking about unvaccinated people who died, like those are people who similarly had loved ones who were crushed by their loss.
Right.
And so, if you were one of those people who was doing that, and you came back from the brink, if you were alarmed by the feelings that you were having, and it made you rethink the way that you were just, as he says, defining people just by their politics,
Right.
and you reflected on that and changed, then I think that is a story that people should be willing to tell. Now, I didn't see evidence that his reflections manifested themselves or expressed themselves in any way on his show. Like, I would have loved it if he would have gone on air and expressed some of these human sympathies toward migrants or toward, even toward the Oberlin grads that he's always dunking on. Like, we're all humans on this planet struggling to make our way in it. And this realization that he expresses in this private text didn't, to me, seem to make it onto air.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think if you had him here in front of you, he would probably agree that he could have done a lot more of that because, this is a leaked message from his opponents to make him look bad. It's not him trying to make himself look good or anything that was supposed to be public. So that obviously gets to the sincerity of what he's saying. The white men fight line, that's not how white men fight. The context of, as you were saying, Ryan, the glorification that people read into the top of the text message of violence. In the context, what he's doing very clearly is disparaging his own wrong-mindedness. He's sort of like mocking his own thought process, and he's giving a caricature of his own thought process, and that's why I think the social media climate makes it so difficult. And people said the same thing about cable news before. I mean, cable news is still fairly new, creation of the 80s mostly, makes it very difficult for us to have honest versions of these conversations, because how many tens of thousands of people, if not millions of people, saw the "that's not how white men fight" line, and didn't, do what we have to do because it's our job, and spend 5 minutes thinking about this whole story and read the whole context. It makes it impossible to have that conversation when some section of the public just not through any fault of their own, they have busy lives and they care about these issues, so they bother to read about them. But if we're not all on the same page with information because social media is putting us on dramatically different pages based on where its incentives are, and I think maybe if Tucker were here, I think maybe he would agree that cable news is just like a really bad format for him to have a conversation like that on. So I think it's interesting that this is something that was never meant to be public, was leaked by his enemies. And again, like his rant about Fox Nation just not being a product that's up to what the audience deserves, and he's putting all this work into it, et cetera, et cetera. I continue to think these leaks are just like bizarrely flattering to Tucker, because it just makes him look more sort of thoughtful than I think often comes across for anyone on cable.
If this is some type of a caricature, implicit caricature of a racist and racialized view of how white men fight, how black men fight, how brown men fight,
or just where a white man's head goes when he's thinking about this, like the Liam Neeson thing.
Yeah, I'm skeptical of that. Maybe it is. To me, it struck me as racist in the sense that that there's something different about the honor of white men and how they fight versus other races, and it just isn't true. Like, as somebody who grew up in a rural area with lots of white people, like, white men are just as likely to jump somebody and probably jump a white guy as anybody else. And so the idea that he could have just said, it's not how honorable people fight. So if he was caricaturing a view of white people as particularly honorable, and then connecting that to his overly politicized kind of prism through which he's viewing all of these interactions, then okay. But then, like I said, it would also be nice to see those epiphanies expressed publicly.
Yeah, I agree.
If that's really what they are.
Well, and I guess maybe I misspoke. I didn't mean that he's caricaturing the sort of like average white man's mindset so much as he's talking about where we naturally go as like tribalistic individuals, where our brain will naturally go, which is, well, this is not how white men fight, which is like obviously a terrible impulse and instinct to have. That's, yeah,
right.
Absolutely
and
a terrible.
if he recognizes it as that, then that can be an interesting kind of self-exploration.
Yeah,
but
and
it
where
requires that self-examination.
Well, and I think where he lands is what makes that context important, like where he lands in the thought process. And so, you know, the bottom line is that neither of us can get into the head of...
Maybe he'll come on and we can ask him about this.
We'd love that. And neither of us can get into his head, obviously. But I continue to think there's just absolutely no truth to the story that this is why he was fired from Fox News. I actually think the Vanity Fair report is the closest to the truth, that Rupert Murdoch was uncomfortable with the fiance he just broke up with, loving Tucker.
Said that Tucker was the voice of God.
He's having this
like,
sort
no,
of
I'm
like
the voice of God.
Right,
Yeah.
this evangelical attachment to Tucker. Tucker goes to the Heritage Foundation that Friday after signing off his show, saying, see you next week, just having had a great meeting with Rupert Murdoch and Lachlan Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch he gives this very sort of spiritual Christian speech at the Heritage Foundation. And it's just like, there's this kind of, you know, when you're a 92-year-old eccentric billionaire, you make impulsive and bad decisions business-wise, and he'd had enough of Tucker Carlson. Obviously, I'm sure the lawsuits have been such headaches for Fox that it contributed to his exasperation with Tucker Carlson, but they have had these videos. They have known about these videos for a very long time. It was not just that they got this information over that weekend. As Megyn Kelly has pointed out, I think that's a really important point, and it goes to the fact that this is a line that Fox is pushing to the media, and that is why they're leaking these videos, because they think it makes them look good for having said enough is enough.
And it's not that different than the types of things anyway.
No, it really, no, I agree.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Soccer and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.